Hello, my name is Cameron Bunker, and I'm an assistant professor at Emerson College in the Department of Marketing Communication. And I'm excited to tell you about some findings about how people misperceive personality as more extreme on social media than offline contexts. Let's talk about personality expression on social media. A key feature of social media is the digital attention economy. People are competing for other users' attention and algorithms that spread social media content. Often, it seems as if the most popular social media profiles are those that express extreme views and behavior. In other words, it seems as if social media may reward extreme personalities. The question is, do people perceive extreme personality on social media as the norm? And if so, are such perceptions accurate? To this end, I examined how people perceive others and themselves on social media and offline contexts. People tend to perceive their offline and social media selves differently. So, some work that I've done and others have conducted has focused on the big five personality traits. And a key finding is that people tend to perceive their offline self as higher on the big five personality traits than their social media self. But what about others? When we think about other people, do we perceive them as having different traits offline than they do on social media? Based off of the digital attention economy, people might perceive others to have higher levels of the big five personality traits on social media than offline. To test this, I collected two samples of college student and prolific participants, and they completed adapted versions of the Big Five Inventory 2. Taking the frame of reference approach, I modified the item content to indicate the context of the offline and social media selves. So people responded thinking about their offline self, their social media self, and they also completed versions thinking about the typical person, both offline and on social media. So taken together, we have four assessments of the big five personality traits to capture how people think about themselves and others, both offline and on social media. Let's take a look at the results, first focusing on self-perception. Replicating prior work, we found that people perceive themselves as lower on all of the big five on social media than offline. And there are two interpretations of this finding. One are that people perhaps perceive their social media self as constrained. They're not able to express the same levels of traits as they are offline. Another interpretation is that people perceive their social media selves as less socially desirable, as most of the big five are viewed as socially desirable traits. Now let's take a look at how people perceive others. I replicated only one finding with the self-reports, and that people perceived others as also being less agreeable on social media than offline. But for most of the big five, specifically openness, conscientious, and extroverted, people perceive the opposite. They perceive others as higher on these traits on social media than offline. And there was no significant difference for neuroticism between the contexts when thinking about others. So this suggests that people perceive others as less constrained or perhaps having more socially desirable traits on social media than offline. So do people perceive extreme personalities on social media as the norm? Yes, but they don't perceive themselves this way. People perceive themselves as perhaps more constrained or having less socially desirable traits on social media than offline. But they perceive others perhaps as freer to express extreme personalities in social media. A key question for future research is whether these asymmetries in self-other perception between the contexts influence behavior. You know, because people perhaps perceive themselves as constrained, but others as free to act in this way. This might explain widespread passive and maladaptive use of social media. Thank you for coming to my presentation.